Well, welcome to the Reposs Non-League show, and really pleased to say we've got another chairman special. And a lot of people asked and said, "Look, can we get the guys back on again?" And it's fantastic for you to give up your time tonight. We know, as we said, Nick's away, but Craig has fantastically stepped in tonight. So thank you, Craig. But of course, joining us, of course, he's Mark Harris from the Northern League. Nice to have you on, Craig. Mark again.
Which league, David?
Northern Premier League. Sorry, mate. Northern Premier League. Sorry.
Thank you.
And of course, as well, Dave Martin's on from the Southern League.
Hello, Dave.
How are we, mate? And of course, we've got Craig Johnston, Vice Chairman from the Eastern League. Guys, I mean, this weekend, and I mean, I always ask people when they come on. I mean, I take it you guys were probably at some games. Anything that sort of took your eye over the weekend, non-league wise?
Well, I think we're coming down to the business end of the season, aren't we now? And every weekend brings a combination of surprises, good and bad. And I think what's significant, certainly within our own league, is the relegation zones. What seemed to be fairly clear-cut situations a month ago could be anybody's game. And top and bottom, with a couple of exceptions, it's wide open.
I think we're seeing the same. Different clubs are beating each other. The top 5 in most leagues are quite competitive, and the bottom 4 are as well. We were just talking today about Division 1 South, and there's about 4 clubs on 34, 35 points. And, whereas the champions might be starting to evolve, the playoff places and the relegation places are still up for grabs, most of them.
I think the biggest surprise, in the Summer League results this weekend, it's got to be Enfield beating Leighton Town.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
I mean, that was some result, in there. But about yourself, Craig?
I saw Enfield a few weeks ago, and they certainly, look a lot better than their league position. So.
And they brought a few in as well.
I think they've signed Enfield, they brought a couple in, haven't they? 2 or 3 come in last week, I believe.
Yeah. What about yourself, Craig? Anything there for you?
Ishmael League is a little bit like the Southern League. The champions, you look at the South Central, Leverhead have got about a 10-point lead. You've got Folkestone are almost home and dry in our step 3. The North's in the balance, and the South East really is 3 bridges to lose, although they did lose on Saturday, but they're still quite clear. So it's the top of the tables are really sort of almost could be done and dusted by the beginning of April, easy, I would say.
I mean, that North League though, would that be the actual league that you would have thought would have been done and dusted by now at the beginning of the season because of who's in it?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, it just goes to show you that the thing that makes the world go round, as they say, doesn't always make football teams perform, does it?
No, I mean 2 points behind Felixstowe and with a game in hand, so it's definitely an interesting one.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not quite so bad in the Prem from that perspective, but 3 years ago we had a situation whereby not one of the divisions was settled going into the final day. So we actually had to dig out all sorts of old trophies that had been decommissioned, pass them off as duplicates of the real thing. And we literally had one person sat halfway between 2 grounds in a lay-by, engine running, to see which one that they were going to have to go to. Thankfully, not quite that bad this year, but it is approaching that stage where you then get to that. I mean, Redcar are going absolutely great guns, and they will be the first of our 4 divisional champions without a shadow of a doubt. Carlton probably in the Midlands, just behind them, but Redcar are 17 points clear, and that's in their first season at step 4.
Crazy. I mean, wasn't that an incident happened a few years ago? I know when we were doing this radio show back in the Craig will remember this, when we used to do a radio show in the actual back of the shop. And I always remember it was VCD and Whittam as well, where it was last day thing when no one knew where it was going to go, and people were sort of hanging around just to make sure they could get the trophy in the right place.
Yeah.
I mean,
It does happen. It happens regularly. Every season, there's usually one somewhere, and it's last day of the season, and invariably, it's uncanny how the two teams sometimes end up playing each other and that sort of thing.
Go on, Dave.
I mean, we've got the closest one we've got is probably Premier Central, and that's between at the moment Harbour Town and Spalding. And if that goes to the last day of the season, we've already had a look at it, and they're playing sort of like 2 hours apart. Even if we park a car halfway between the grounds, they're both away.
Get a helicopter, David. You can afford it.
And the Premier League funding, yeah.
That's the one.
But we got non-league day coming up next weekend. I mean, anything in any of your divisions that is going to be, something to look forward to? I mean, have you heard any sort of strange things that clubs are going to be putting on? I know clubs sometimes give away sort of free food from different people. I mean, it's mushrooms from one non-league ground a few years back as well. But I mean, is there anything special, Mark, that's going on in any of the teams?
I think a lot of the clubs that are supporting an excellent cause, obviously in non-league day, a fair number of them are doing discounted or free admission, various offers in and around the grounds. The interesting one, and we're not quite sure where this is going to be yet, is that there was one of these mockumentaries that was filmed at one of our grounds. That's being launched to coincide with non-league day. So we're just looking at where we're going to do the launch event. Very, very funny. I won't do any spoilers, but actually really, really good. Certainly better than some of the dreadful sitcoms that have been put out about non-league football in recent years.
I've just literally, before I come out on Sky Sports, saw Heaton, who had Shay Given and Shola Amiobi there, and that was about a 10-minute thing on Sky Sports to do with Premier League stadium funding and stuff. That was quite good.
We are starting to get some more and more coverage. It's just disappointing when it's off the back of stuff that is really only of great interest to fans at the top end of the game. But we've got to keep going with it. I mean, one of my clubs, Rushden and Diamonds, today got national coverage, but only because they fired 2 players for appearing in the Baller League. And fired 2 players for fighting on the pitch rather than the Baller League, which is another concern we can talk about in a bit.
Well,
the Isthmian League are supporting prostate cancer at all our games.
Yeah,
with various bits of fundraising around that sort of style of it.
I think that's what the Essex City League are doing as well, isn't it? As well, I think they're doing the same.
Sure.
Yeah, I think they're possibly doing the same. I know they definitely did that last year as well. But Dave, yourself?
Well, I don't know specific details yet because we're just compiling details of. We've asked all the clubs to let us know what their programs are, but I think most of it is around discounted tickets, free entry for certain people, promotions within the club.
It's definitely good. It's definitely a cause that seems to, because they've moved it, haven't they? Because it used to be the first international break, and now it's come to almost to the last one of the season. You remember it always used to be sort of September time, didn't it? When we first started it.
Yeah, it is a league. I think it's got to a certain level. I think the objective for it is now to see how it can move to another level. As David's just said, a lot of the approaches taken by clubs are very, very similar. It's where you perhaps have the more creative ones that really do stand out. I mean, one of the things that I've always felt is actually undersold by clubs around the country is what their local speciality is. I mean, I remember in the days when I was chairman of Whitton Albion, we would go to Whitby Town on the opposite end of the coach. We'd take them a Cheshire cheese and they'd give us a pile of kippers. Coach company went absolutely ballistic when we got to the other end. But, whether it's a local beer or whatever it is that is of the locality, that's unique to that club. And I've always felt more could be, but you're reliant on the volunteers that you've got, the most precious commodity we have in our game. You're reliant on them to come up with the ideas and do the implementing. So I do understand it.
I mean, while we're on to volunteers, and I mean, it's been sort of good and bad over the last sort of two sort of volunteers that I know very well through the show and see through social media over the last one. Of course, one of them, of course, is the connection that James Beardwell had with this away days, and they ended up managing to get, I think it was 1,020 through the gate for the game against Galston a few weeks ago, which was fantastic. And then on the other side of it, and somebody that I'm not sure if Dave knows, but I know it's a club close to his heart. But of course, you got is it Josh, the drummer that's down at he was at Paul, and I think he's now at Dorchester. On the other side of it, of course, he's announced the last couple of days about the amount of abuse that he's been getting as well online as well, and saying that that he's probably going to give it up this year as well. So we get the good and we get the bad as well, don't we? We people, but there's a lot of people out there that are actually promoting the non-league game.
Yes, indeed. But I think what you've sorry, I'm changing the subject, but what you've said about Josh, and I don't know him personally, but it seems to be rife at the moment through non-league football. It's not this abuse and the behaviour of certain people in the crowd, particularly sort of teenagers. There's a lot of trouble. There's a lot of police involvement. There's a lot of disorder at grounds, which we've never had, and it seems to be groups of young people who are planning to go to grounds to cause disorder, and those from higher leagues that have got banning orders, which only come down to the National League Step 1.
I think you add to that, David, don't you, as well, the fact that at professional grounds, they've got the CCTV because they can afford it. And it's actually much harder now for people who want to misbehave at an EFL ground. Marginally less so in the National League. So I think what's happening is you're finding kids of precisely that age, the kind of 13, 14, who are coming to our games, which is really bad for it. It's the last thing we actually need at a time when the professional game is starting to price itself out. A golden opportunity for us in non-league football, and particularly in the National League system. And we do find these things at our level as well. Stewards, many clubs can't afford to professional stewards, so you're reliant on training someone up to wear that jacket, and know what to do with it. So it is a challenge. I would add to that, and one of the things that I think is really worrying for our level of the game is the growth in abusive language, and I don't just mean on the field. I mean off it, and when it is directed at players. I can't go into specifics, but we had a case this weekend just gone where a game was abandoned because of alleged racist abuse to a visiting player from a home fan. Now, you've got to go through a whole process, then rely on the match officials to follow the protocol. But the real risk is the opposite, is where you could have players weaponizing that for their own games. Players are very cute. And as our visiting management teams, that's probably my biggest concern at the moment. We've got to get a grip of that, and we've got to send a strong message. But with it comes a big risk.
But I think it's a societal issue. It's not just it's happening in football at our level at the moment, but I think it is a problem within society. And
I agree with you, David, but I think the problem is people expect football to take a lead as the national sport. I mean, we never hear about abuse in rugby or cricket or whatever, and however genteel that may well be, I can't believe it doesn't go on. I mean, Craig, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think we've got an even bigger problem because I see it more at youth level from under 10s right the way through, with parents having a go at not necessarily managers, but I've heard that as well, but officials, some of which are volunteers. Not every referee is obviously paid, but the abuse that they give referees, some of the parents, you got, and the problem you've got is on a Sunday morning, you've probably got 30 people watching. So that person that's yelling out, everybody can hear him. Whereas if you've got 400 in the ground and someone's shouting at the referee, it probably gets lost a lot more. So, it's definitely happening in the kids' games. It's terrible. I've got 28 youth teams at my club, and there's not many weeks go by where there's not some form of incident, whether it be on the pitch or from off the pitch, that goes on at a game. Over in parks and stuff like that. I've heard of, there was one occasion where a young girl who was refereeing was basically, I think she was about 15, 16, refereeing like an under 10 game. And this was last season. And she was abused so badly that she abandoned the game and ran off crying and never continued her development with refereeing. And it's, but the problem that I see there is that the clubs are then being crucified, and I've had it personally at my club as well, for a parent's action, failing to control its supporters. Well, I get it in a stadium in non-league football, but at youth football, how you control a parent, and they all sign codes of conduct, etc. But if he wants to abuse or she wants to abuse a match official, there's not a lot anybody can do about that. But it's the club that gets the fine. Now, we had one where a dad got fined, I think it was £200, and the club got fined £175 for failing to control. But the fine comes through the club. So we ended up paying 375 quid, and there's no recourse to get the money back from the parent. So what deterrent is there? So I think it all seems not right from the bottom level upwards.
So with that in mind, how do we stop this from happening? Because I've noticed it. I mean, I've been down at Waltham Abbey, and there's a lot of kids there. I've been to see a couple of Harlow games this season. Seen a lot of youngsters there. Same sort of scenarios as well. So I mean, you can see it sort of creeping in, and you read some of the reports, that you see online and stuff, from games, and you see it on there that this isn't happening or that. How do we stop that then now, and how do we control that?
A lot of
I think
a handful of clubs who are now not admitting under 16s to their matches without being accompanied by an adult, and they register their own players from the junior teams. But anybody who's not a registered player with the junior teams cannot get into the ground without being accompanied by an adult.
I think from my own perspective, I totally take Craig's point. In youth football, that must be an absolute nightmare, and I wouldn't have a clue where to start. I think for where the three of us are at, for steps 3 and 4 of the National League system, I'm afraid the only solutions I see, because you have to rely on your clubs to manage those who are within it. I think the only solutions are awarding matches, deducting points, and for repeat offences, perhaps worse than that. But as I said earlier on, the biggest risk of this is the nature of football being that, and okay, any antisocial activity, homophobic, racist, whether it's related to gender, ability, or whatever, is completely abhorrent. As David says, it's happening in society. But there is the flip side of this is the risk that actually clubs can use this to their advantage. Because when you do get an allegation of whatever abusive language, it's really, really hard to prove. Really hard. And you wind up getting into the he said, she said, he said, she said type of thing. And it's really, really difficult then to come to an accurate version of justice. But I genuinely believe that the only way is by taking a stand and making clubs do whatever is necessary, as David said, whether that's banning under 16s. It's not easy, that's for sure. But I think we risk what we've built up over the last 30 years in non-league football as a safe environment. I mean, I'm sure I'm the same as each of you guys. I went to start watching non-league football 12 years of age. My parents were quite happy for me to go because it was a safe environment, and it was affordable. And we've got that vantage now. And I think some of these activities we do risk undermining a lot of the progress we've made.
And the impact of this as well is on the increased cost to clubs at a time when every penny matters. Costs are rising everywhere, electricity for the floodlights, etc. The clubs aren't going to be able to survive by just using volunteer stewards anymore. They're going to have to start paying to bring in SIA qualified people, and they just can't afford that additional cost.
Having said that, everything within a club is within your control, and without without getting uber controversial, but hey ho, David, it's your show, so I will. Players earn too much money at this level of the game. You have got clubs, certainly within the NPL. I can't speak for the Isthmian or the Southern. You've got clubs who are spending ludicrous amounts of money chasing a dream that they will never ever achieve. And you sometimes do look at it, and you'll hear a chair going, "Well, we really can't afford to do this." And you know full well that club is spending 900 quid on a centre forward at step 4. What is all that about? So there needs to be a very serious rethink at some boardroom levels. And it's fine saying, "Oh yeah, well we really want to have a go this year." I could quote you some horrendous budgets that are nowhere, that are vastly in excess of what a club needs to spend to be in contention. That for me is absolutely reckless. And I do believe that there are a number of clubs, far from all, who could be actually utilising the funds at their disposal much more effectively.
So that brings me on to another question. I mean, I suppose one question from what you just said there, Mark, do you think we'll ever get to the day? I've always thought it should be done in professional football. It's probably never going to happen in professional football, but maybe at steps 3, steps 4, steps 5, where a board sits and says, right, okay, this is what you got to play grade A players, this is what you play grade B players, this is what you play grade C players, and actually have a almost like a cap on it.
Well, I think no is the straight answer to that, and I'll give you the reasons why I don't think it'll ever, and I don't think it ever should happen. Our role as leagues is to run competitions. It isn't to run our members' clubs' business. We can guide them, we can give them advice, we can benchmark what players are paid, but at the end of the day, we're not there to run those clubs. Second point, I think, is that all it would do, if you did have a cap, all it's going to do is drive payments through the back door. We'll be back to payments at the highest level. They get round it through accounts in the Cayman Islands and more types of skullduggery than I could even think of. And at our level, it will be back to the days of boot money. So I don't think that is and actually, it actually makes it too easy for clubs. But at the end of the day, when you run a club, it's your legal and moral duty to hand that club over in a better state than when you found it. I mean, Craig, for you at Aveley, throughout your time, you'll have picked that club up and you'll be handing it on to someone in a better state than when you found it. We're only ever temporary custodians.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with that amount of money that's in the game at the moment and coming into the game, and as you said, £900 for a player here, £900 for a player there, does it concern you then when you see the amount of clubs that are physically right on that breadline of possibly they don't know if they can finish the seasons, they don't know if they can start a season, and then all of a sudden that those clubs sort of disappear? Is that a sort of a concern as well?
I get more fed up when I see postings going, it's not the fans' fault and the FA should do something about it. Because I think in a club in non-league, fans are not responsible for what the people who run their clubs spend. I agree. But supporters have a duty to actually say, because let's face it, most supporters, and rightly so, why should they care how the clubs run? All you do, you want to turn up and see a great game of football, you want your club to buy the best players, and you want to win trophies. But you then do look at when a club, and supporters are not daft, exactly the reverse. You might have 200 people coming in and you've got top players coming in, and they have to ask the question about affordability. And the FA isn't there to dig clubs, private limited companies in many cases, not there to dig them out the brown smelly stuff. Because a lot of clubs who are getting into trouble, not all, it's nearly always because they're spending more than they earn.
I think also, David, just on the sort of cost control, we all know about the cost control in the Premier League and the EFL. But when it gets down to our level, it's got to be proportionate for the level of football that we play at. So the National League, I think at step 1, mirror the EFL's scheme to protect the promotion to the EFL. But when it comes down to it, and they have approved budgets and they go into a lot of detail, we don't go into so much detail because our clubs are run by volunteers. Yeah, at step one, most of the National League clubs have employed staff to deal with it. So we look at what's proportionate for us, and that's making sure that payments to HMRC are made on time for PAYE and VAT, and we collect data on creditors so we know how much clubs owe, but there's limited resources to deal things because ultimately, as Mark said, where it's a limited company, the directors are responsible for managing that company in accordance with the law and not trading whilst insolvent.
Don't get me wrong, I think the day will come when at steps 3 and 4 we will have to mirror some of the practices in the National League in terms of monitoring what clubs are spending. But none, all of that's fine, but it's absolutely of bugger all use if you don't have the football regulation to back it up. I mean, we can look at clubs at different levels of the game, and people can reach different conclusions about the people who run those clubs or the way in which they're being run. But when you look at a club, and you can go and look at the books, although currently within the rules, the clubs at our level, steps 3 and 4, are actually completely within their rights to go clear off. You're not looking at that because you've got no right to. So it's fine having all those controls, but unless you've got the football regulation to back it up, it's not worth the proverbial in a spacesuit.
I mean, on the sort of front of what you play players, how difficult is it? I mean, Craig will probably know more than Dave and Mark, but I mean, how difficult was it then for the jump when Aveley had sort of one promotion, second promotion? How difficult was that keeping those players happy, not just playing football, but also financially when they were jumping up the actual league ladder?
Well, we were fortunate in some respect because we bounced 2 years from 4 to 2, and we took we kicked off at Chippenham on the opening day of the season with 9 starting that had been at step 4. So we had a very young sort of squad that had followed us through, and hugely cheaper than what lots of clubs, for instance, Torquays and Yeovilles and Chelmsfords and all sorts were paying. The problem we had, and we had a very good season with that, the problem was we lost practically the entire squad because they were all put on a pedestal. When it come to replace them, that's why we got relegated, and relegated very, very comfortably because we were way out of sync with step 2 from a budgetary point of view, and at the end of the day, there was no way was I or the club ever going to put the club in financial difficulty by trying to stay there at the time. So, that's realistic. But I do think sometimes some other clubs might have done it differently completely, but that's never been my personal philosophy in the 30 years that I've run Aveley Football Club. And that's why we own our own ground and haven't got any debt and can say that, where probably 95% of the clubs in the country can't say that.
And
I mean, I never have a problem with a club spending the money on a player, whether it be 900, and that's an extreme example. The average is obviously much less than that. And I've never got a problem if the club is generating the income to be able to do that. So within the NPL, we've got Bury, who are now commanding regularly 3,000 people coming through the turnstiles every week. Good luck to them. Fantastic for them. So of course they can afford to spend more money on players. I look at the likes of Hensford in our Prem division, taken over by Craig Gwilt and his wife a couple of summers ago, going great guns now. Superb investment in the stadium, in the infrastructure. Good luck to them because they're doing it the right way. What Craig is doing at AV, absolutely the right way. But even when it's done the wrong way, as competitions, we only have a limited amount of power, and every stakeholder has a duty, I believe, and that includes management, it includes fans, it includes everybody, that when a club is not being run correctly, it only ever ends badly.
And I mean, this talking about that sort of jump. Is the jump from our level, step 3, up to step 2, a big jump, or is it something or do you find it a big jump the second season rather than the first season? And the reason I ask
It was a big jump purely because of the associated costs that go with it as well. For instance, so our travel bill last year was £28,000. You know, you pay in the national step 2, you're paying in excess of £600 to £700 for 4 match officials. At step 3, it's a godsend. Like we're paying £250 roughly a week. That's huge differences of money. You know, it's interesting going back a little bit on financial control and stuff like that. And the National League are a lot more thorough. I think they've got part-time, full-time staff that look at all the figures that the clubs send through, etc., of how much you're spending and how much you owe and all sorts of bits and pieces. Big returns have to be filled in. But interestingly, and I had this conversation with our own directors as such, is that when you look back over the last 15 years in football, and we talk about we're worried about clubs going under, the only clubs that are going under are the National League clubs, and yet their books are being looked at monthly, weekly, whatever by the people. You know, they're big clubs. Like I think you've had some in the north, like Chester, and in our area, Grays a few years ago, which basically implode and get booted down 2 or 3 divisions. Was Hereford that case as well?
A long time ago, yeah. But we had Nuneaton recently.
So it's those clubs, I think, that they're big clubs, don't get me wrong, but they have to be at the higher level, whatever the higher level is. It's always one higher than what they are, and they'll do anything to stay there. And you know, if you're a step 5 club and your weekly budget's £250 and you're paying £350, yes, it'll hurt. But when you're step 1, one of the top sides, I'm trying to think now in step 1, help me out guys, Rochdale. If Rochdale, who gets 7,000 people a week and their weekly budget on players is £50,000 and they are spending £150,000 a week, then that's huge problems when it goes wrong.
Which is back to
the problem lies.
I think it comes back to the problem of supporters, quite rightly, because at the end of the day, who do we do all this for? You know, and ultimately we do it for the fans. Fans will look to leagues like ours to say, what action are you taking? And they'll look to the FA to take action, who would look to do it through the leagues anyway. And that's where it comes back to. Currently, all we can do to a club that is patently spending money that it can't afford is go, look, chaps, I think you should really rather do this a little bit better. And short of a registrations embargo, there's nothing we can do. But to Craig, your other point on clubs coming up from step 5, we often see every year, I know the 3 leagues, we each do sessions that are intended for newly promoted clubs and we actually subtitle ours, be careful what you wish for. Because you know what it's like. You're when you're running a club, you're wrapped up in the results. You're going up for promotion, and really, it's kind of March time before you even get promoted that you've got to think of what ground improvements have I got to make if I get promoted. What is the average wage level at clubs in my area? What's the travel going to be like? How can I afford it? And if I had a magic wand, that will be one of the things that I would look to do, is to actually get a better understanding on the part of clubs coming up from step 5 of what life at the higher level is like. And I think similarly for a lot of clubs from step 3 going to step 2.
Yeah, because we seem to have clubs, especially in the leagues like, and apologies, Mark, but it's sort of Ishmael and Southern that you see go up into sort of like the Vanarama South, not Vanarama South, where we are now, but into the South. And we seem to do okay the first season, but in the second season, it seems to get that lot harder. You know, for instance, I mean, yourselves at Averley, Enfield Town this season, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, on another side of it, I suppose, from the Southern League, Merthyr have done fantastically well this year, sitting up there, but then all of a sudden at Christmas they get their top 2 strikers taken away from them, and then all of a sudden after that they're starting to struggle a little bit in there. So it seems to be that second year of
Lymington.
Yeah,
Lymington, prime example. They had a good first season in the National League, but they're in the relegation zone at the moment.
Yeah,
I think it's true in the north as well. I mean, we've seen clubs go up and do very well. So if I look in National North at the moment, Fylde, South Shields, Marine, Radcliffe, less so. There's three recently ex-NPL clubs that are doing very well. But as you say, it's about year two. Warrington Town came down in year two. It's always the year where the momentum's run out a little bit. But I think honestly that's across football. I really do. But we're talking about quite negative topics tonight, and I think we forget just so much we have moved non-league football. Non-league football has moved itself forward in recent years. The stadia are so much better. The pitches are so much better. Player welfare is so much better, and the quality of the football. And I'll tell you what, I've seen a few bad ones this season. I am the 0-0 draw champion of the NPL. I've seen 75 of my clubs this year, but the quality overall is great. It's marvelous. It is such a great product and one we should be really, really proud of. And we've talked about some negative things on this show because they're some of the things that are affecting us all. But it's a fabulous story we've got to tell.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, and I say the crowd seem to be going up. I mean, I know, years ago, and Craig will probably be able to back me up on this. You used to go to Waltham Abbey in September. You used to go to Waltham Abbey in May, and it would be like Southend Beach. Don't if it was September or if it was May. You go over to that ground now, and that pitch over there now is probably better than some of the 3G pitches you see. It's phenomenal what they've done over there. I mean, Craig, he was over there the other week watching the game. The actual pitch over there now is sensational, and the infrastructure. You used to drive into their car park, and it'd be like pothole city. You could lose your whole car in some of the was in their car park.
I think that's a club that. I think that's one of the few clubs that I can honestly hand on heart turn around and say that they've got it massively right off the pitch, and now that's reaping rewards on the pitch because they're third in the division. They will be in the playoffs, and I'm sure again when they went to the Premier probably 12 years ago they weren't ready for it and they come crashing back down. But I fully expect that if they was to get through in the playoffs this year, then sustainability would be step 3 for them because of the way that club's developed over the last 10 years or so.
And it just amazes me because I sort of go and see them. I've got to see a couple of the Harlows, and we know the story behind what's going on there at the minute as well. You look at that and you think, getting 250 through Waltham Abbey, but the fans still coming out for a step 5 side at nearly 400 every game. It's just incredible to see that. The fans still want to come out, and the fan tendencies are getting bigger and bigger. And I know we've spoken about negative stuff, but I did want to ask you guys about this Baller League. I mean, what do we think of it?
Well, I think what do I think of it? I think it as a product in itself. Okay, I get it, but for me, the implications of this, and I'll use the word arrogance on the part of the people who have set this thing up, who are taking players away from their clubs, potentially leaving them in breach of contract. So you have a player who's going off to play in the Baller League. Now, I don't have any stats for how many of these players are getting permission from their clubs, and if their clubs are given permission, fine. But we've seen a case in the last in the last 10 days higher up the pyramid where players, I don't think, understand what they are putting at risk. They could well be uninsured. So I've not seen anything relating to the insurance of players in the Baller League. And as I say, I use the term arrogance because it's the expectation that players at our level are just going to fall over and actually walk away from the clubs that are contracting them, that are paying them every week for half an hour's worth of playing at the playing what is perceived as being at a bigger level. I've got to say, I just think I do not wish it a success.
Personally, from a club point of view, if we had a baller league player, then I would expect him to be non-contract, and I would expect the manager to manage that like he would do anybody else. If we had a player under contract, then by hook or by crook, I would be negotiating that contract is cancelled because I wouldn't want to go through the procedures of getting injured in the Baller League and then my player claiming that he wants to be paid for the rest of his contract. I think it's immoral for a player to sign a contract and then go and play in something like that purely for money.
Dave?
Yeah, it's a problem that needs to be sorted. It doesn't seem to be any solution to it at the moment, but players
The problem is
they've signed the contract and they're only allowed to play for that one club under contract. Sorry, Mark.
no, not at all. Sorry for interrupting. The problem is this: the Baller League is not affiliated to the Football Association. The Football Association has no powers over the Baller League. Therefore, you would have thought that those organising the Baller League would have come and consulted, certainly with the leagues at the top four levels of the National League system, and had a sensible conversation. All right, if they then didn't like what they heard, then uh, then they go off and do their own thing. Doesn't mean we'd like it anymore. I fully endorse what Craig and David are saying. I don't think it could become a bigger problem should the Baller League take off. But again, arrogance. Just it's only a little non-league. They won't turn down the opportunity of a few more quid. Once again, complete lack of understanding of what makes our level of the game tick.
There's quite a bit of traction on social media of people saying it's better that they go and play in a Baller League rather than training or additional for training because your player will be fitter, etc. I'd like to see one of these big clubs, and let's be honest, there's a couple of Step 1 players playing in it as well that are on contract. What it really needs to be highlighted is and I shouldn't throw names about, but like York City, they need to have their goalkeeper or the centre forward, like the boy Ollie Pearce, who's banging goals in at Step 1 like he did at Worthing at Step 2, Step 3, to go and play Baller League and, God forbid, give him a season-ending injury and then see how the York City fans react to it.
Yeah,
Because there won't be many York City fans thanking Ollie Pearce, for instance, for being out for the season because he wanted to go and earn another 500 quid a week in Baller League.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose away from it. If there's one question to ask you, try and sort of make it a little bit more upbeat as such around it. But if there's one rule that you would like to see put into, our level of football, Step 3, Step 4, what would that rule be? What would you like to see changed?
Well, bearing in mind we do make rule changes every year. There's a clear process, as you know, for doing that, and the three leagues cooperate very, very well, as we've done over the last 10 plus years. We do cooperate in trying to come up with the rules that will improve our club's lot. The clever bit is making sure that you are changing rules for the benefit of the clubs rather than from the benefit of administration. So I can't immediately think of a rule that I would want to change. I can't think of a rule that would ban the Baller League. No, I don't mean that. I think for me, it's more go back to our first point about financial control. I would like to see some rules in there that give us, to quote David, proportionate rules. That give us proportionate powers to go and look at what is actually happening within some clubs' finance. Why do we want to do this? For sporting integrity reasons. All football should be decided by what happens on the field, but maybe that's a slightly naive view. Just my thought.
I think it's ultimately it's a level playing field. Sporting integrity and a level playing field. It's equal. Every club complies with the rules and has equal chance of achieving success. But it'd be interesting. Do you have any rules that you think should change, and Dave?
No, it's not a rule as such. There's one thing that I always get. As you know, I do this manager's view on a Sunday night, and I get the same question asked me, not sometimes on air, sometimes off air, or whatever. And it's around basically. The rule that he wants changed doesn't really affect the Northern Premier League at the minute, but it could do in this sort of scenario. He's saying to me, why is it? He understands that the Southern League don't have like a reserves under 23s league, but the Isthmian do. if we're a trident league, and sometimes this club could be, depending on the shift of teams that get promoted, teams that get relegated, they are one of those teams that are on the brink of one season being in the Southern League, and in the next season they could be in the Isthmian, and in the following season they could be in the Southern. Why is it that his club cannot then play the local sides in the Isthmian League in their under 23s? They've got a reserve league, whatever the league is.
We don't run a 23 or reserve league anymore, David. That went about 3 years ago, maybe even before COVID. We just run a youth league, and that youth league is open to outside clubs. So we've got 4 divisions of 10 that we can carry a maximum of 10. I think a couple are running at 9 and 8, but I would say a good third of the teams within that structure are ex-Ishmian or maybe never been Ishmian, but are in the footprint of Ishmian.
I think from our point of view, though, we cover such a vast area. Yeah, from Mousehole across the West Midlands up to the likes of Needham Market and Leiston in East Anglia, and it would be difficult to form enough divisions that made the travelling reasonable. But I know we've had a few clubs that have played in the Ishmian Youth League, and we would never stand in the club's way if they want to participate. Then fine.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think the other factor that some clubs can forget is where you've got ground shares. So now we've brought an end to 3-way ground shares, which is predominantly a southeast problem. But even so, there's still a significant number of ground shares putting pressure on a lot of grass pitches. Now, I don't want to perpetuate the old myth that it's wetter up north, but the reality is that pitch maintenance is still a massive challenge for clubs. So they have to think twice about putting extra pressure on those playing surfaces. Distance is a massive issue. And to be honest, we actually haven't had the demand. If our clubs came to us, and a significant number came to us and said, can we do can the league organise an under 21 league? We'd look at it. We actually haven't had that requested yet.
David, going back on your original question on rule changes, I would like to see a law change, nothing to do with step 3 or step 4, but football in general. And I think the goalkeeper business this year has improved football, certainly speeded it up with regards to having to release the ball a lot quicker, etc., or corners given. And I've attended many games this year, and I've only seen probably 4 or 5 corners given. So it's worked. But my biggest problem I have now is the goalkeeper that goes down halfway through the half, or when his team's conceded, or when they've scored, and there's a tactical break, in other words. Now, that really does get my goat up. And I think the easiest way to prevent that would be, I haven't got a problem if the goalkeeper wants to go down and feign an injury. My problem is all the team then going over to the bench for a tactical chat. And that can be stopped very easily, in my opinion, by saying anybody that goes anywhere near that touchline, then there's a yellow card. It's not allowed anymore. That has to come in. Something has to come in, because it's getting absolutely ridiculous. Near enough every game I watch, a goalkeeper goes. We had a game I was at the other week where the substitute ran down the touchline, and there was only about 50 people in the ground. So I heard it really clearly, because I was standing about 20 yards away, telling the goalkeeper to go down the next time the ball goes out of play. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Craig, can I ask you, would you consider something like the rugby union thing working, where the play continues and the sports therapist runs onto the pitch and treats the injured player?
We wouldn't be able to do that with a goalkeeper, would you? But it would stop the goalkeeper feigning an injury.
Outfield player, I mean.
Yeah.
As well.
Rugby's a lot more stop-start, isn't it? And I believe rugby has got so many good things going for it that, unfortunately, the world of football will never accept that. We run respect campaigns and dissent campaigns and all kinds of things. And the easiest thing in the world is to do exactly what rugby done and move the ball forward 10 yards, and you will stop that before you complete. But I think football's too up its own backside to admit that another sport has got something better than what they have. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
No, I think put your suggestions on a postcard to Howard Webb, care of
Yeah,
IFAB.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
one of the things that Craig just brought up there, the situation with the goalkeepers at the beginning of the season and the rule change there. I don't know if it's me, but normally when you see like a rule change like that, it's absolute carnage for about the first 6 to 8 weeks. It's just absolute carnage. And so I've got a season ticket down there at Waltham Abbey, and it literally very nothing at all. No, and I've spoken to people that have come on the show previously. I said, "Have you had much of an issue with it?" No, no. And very rarely, I've not seen a game so far where a ref given the corner from that. And it always reminds me when the referee does it, and he stands there and he starts calling, 1, 2. But the way they do it, it just reminds me of the old style British wrestling when they used to get counted out, and the bloke used to stand there and go 1, 2 all the time with his hand in the air. But I am surprised that there's not much. There hasn't been more carnage.
Well, I've asked a lot of referees this year, which may get a point to go and ask them about that. And very few of them said they've actually had to sanction a goalkeeper like that. But I'm sure we're all old enough to remember back to. Do you remember the year they banned the back pass to the goalkeeper? My God, that was carnage for about a month. But this just seems to and the point is, just supporting what Craig's saying, this shows that actually you can bring about a fairly major change relatively easily. And I fully support what Craig says. There needs to be a much more open conversation. But because we're football, we couldn't possibly consider anything else from other sports. I think he's dead right.
I think not necessarily a rule change for me, but the one thing that I've seen for years, and it never, ever, very rarely, maybe one in about every 200 times it happens, and never ever gets pulled up by the linesman, is when the goalkeeper's about to take a goal kick, and 9 times out of 10, out of his hands, drop kick, he's outside the area when he releases the ball. But the linesman's already on his bike and he's halfway up the pitch because he don't get to see it.
I'll tell you what, David. Have you seen a game in which all the throw-ins have been taken properly?
Yeah.
Because every game I go to now, my goodness, I mean, there's all sorts of drop it over the head, lift your leg up, all sorts going on.
Carnage. I know. We had Craig Reddy on, the coach from Merthyr. He comes on every week. Unfortunately, he's not coming on this week because he's still travelling back from South Shields. But he was saying he was in a game the other week where the guy was actually taking the throw-ins and he was spinning the ball as he was throwing it. And he said, like, the referee said, "Oh, it's all right. So it's all right for him to do. If he does it again, I'll pull him up. Don't worry, I'll pull him up." And literally, he said he was doing it all game. And he said he got the up of it so much, I think he got yellow carded for it because he was complaining so much about this guy literally just spinning the ball as he was about to throw it.
I think we always hear, and we always hear about the caliber of referees and the state of referees. Then we've got to remember that we're just recovering now from a major refereeing crisis, in which a lot of games at Step 6 were only being officiated by 2 officials. And back to Craig's point previously on about the youth game, there is the knock-on effect of losing so many young referees because they can't cope with the abuse from the parents. Let's have it right. The effects of that are yet to be fully felt. Referees don't get hardly any support or training or mentoring through the vagaries of allocating monies centrally. So they need help. They need clubs to send them the match footage so that they can improve themselves. In all walks of life, there are good people at what they do, average people at what they do, and poor people at what they do. I actually think the standard this year has improved generally. The inconsistency has not. But you're not going to solve that one overnight. But it would be nice to see a throw-in being taken properly.
I know Craig knows my oldest daughter, and she was a ref as well, and she had exactly the same instance as Craig just described, where somebody got right in her face and started screaming abuse at her and all the rest of it, and she came over to me and said, "Dad, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore." She wanted to do it because she wanted to do something that her dad was doing, and she decided that I'm not having that anymore, and walked off. And I'll be honest, I was at a game just watching one of my young referees because I was referee secretary for one of the youth leagues, and I just went to watch a game. It was 2 girls' sides playing in Harlow, and it was an ex-professional, an ex-Tottenham professional standing on the touchline, because I think it must have been his daughter playing, and the abuse he gave this young referee was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, to the extent exactly what I think what Craig just said. She started crying and ran off the pitch, and he didn't see, when I approached him and somebody else approached him, he didn't see anything wrong in his actions or what he'd done at all to this young kid. It was unreal. It was, and I think that's the problem. We've just got to be careful, with the referees coming through. As you say, if we lose these referees at a young age, we're not going to have them coming through the system, and before we know what's going on, we will be down to just one, just a referee or just one linesman.
Going on from what I said about the goalkeeper going down and everybody going over to the bench, I did see somewhere online the other week there's 10 law changes for the World. There's 7 law changes coming in for this year's World Cup. Most of them are like nothing sort of things, but one that was interesting is that there's going to be a tactical break halfway through each half, where the teams do come off and use it almost like as a water break or whatever, and the manager can talk to them, etc., etc. So it was only online and it was a video, but it was well sort of documented, and I wondered, like, I haven't heard of that before, whether that's coming in, but it seems it was all headed up, so it was coming in for the World Cup. So if it does, then watch this space, because you can see the Premier League adopting that, and then obviously we all know what happens after the Premier League adopts something, it finds its way down. And I haven't got an issue with that. If that's what it is, if it is a tactical break halfway through the half, or whatever you want to call it, and I think it is called a tactical break, then so be it. But it's the unauthorised tactical break that miffs me.
That's going to go well on a cold Tuesday night for midweek.
Yeah.
Especially if you're travelling like Murphy done this week, all the way to South Shields, and you're going to add another maybe 20 minutes.
There is one surefire way to avoid extra travelling. It's called get relegated, and it's extremely easy to achieve, because what you do is cut the wage bill in March.
Yeah. Yeah, I know of somebody that's contacted me today and said that his club's done exactly that, and the manager's resigned today. So so I've seen that. But to finish on a plus point, of course, at the end of every season, you have the fantastic night that you three guys have separately, of course, of your award ceremony. So I mean, if everybody doesn't know, I mean, it's a 3 fantastic nights. I mean, whereabouts is when and where's yours this year, Craig?
We're at Brighton on the 14th of June, I believe it is, 13th or 14th, whatever that weekend is. Back to the Metropole there, where we've been probably half a dozen times before over the last 15, 16 years, but it's a return to there.
Okay. Mark?
We're Strictly Come MPL. We're at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, their conference centre, and we're looking forward to it. But to be honest, I'm surprised we've not touched on it before now. We've got that little thing of allocations to look forward to. So I don't know about the other guys. We're knee-deep in maps trying to work out different permutations of miles and mileage and all the rest of it. Just that's the fun to come first. But no, all the AGM does is mark the end of one season, and then it's straight into the next. But we love them.
You beat my last question. I'll come back to it in a sec. Dave, yours?
We're at the Burlington Hotel in the centre of Birmingham on the 21st of June. So it's a new one for us. And I don't think that the allocations are so difficult for you then, Mark. It's normally just arguing between me and Nick over teams in the Ishby and Southern League. So.
Yeah, but David, it doesn't make it any less enjoyable for all of us.
But my question is, isn't there a lot of changes at Step 5 next season? And how does that affect your 3 leagues with promotion?
I don't think it's going to affect us. It's not going to affect us. At the end of the day, there's only so many promotion places that are there to be had. Not for me to comment on what should be happening in a couple of parts of the country where the Step 5 divisions are overloaded. But certainly from a Step 4 perspective, we're not going to start giving up extra clubs going down. What we've got at Steps 1 to 4 is correct. So it's always about the lateral movements. England isn't a perfect shape, and and everyone forgets the key point. All that the allocations meeting does is allocate clubs to leagues there's no such thing as a club being a Northern Premier League club unless it's slap in the middle of one particular geographic area. We only ever have competitions that comprise clubs allocated to us by the Football Association.
And it is really difficult though, because like my Division One South in the Southern League has got really awful travelling, and it's one thing the clubs raise with me all the time is from likes of Bashley and Malvern to Falmouth and Mazel, and as I say to other clubs, we'll come up with a solution. I'll take it to the FA if you can come up with a solution, but it is really difficult to try and find a solution.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean that is probably would you say that's probably the biggest nightmare league out of all of your leagues, your Division One South, because of that, where Mazel are and where Falmouth are down that end of the country, and then you've got people like Bidcot in the same league.
That's right. Yeah. But as Mark said, it's the shape of the country, and I can tell you what it's like travelling to Falmouth when I get back after tomorrow night's match.
I keep telling David I'll have Mazel tomorrow. I'm always looking for a regular holiday vacation slot. So Mazel, very welcome in the NPL.
Yeah, I could just imagine. Yeah,
I saw them last week, but it was at Willands, not at Mazel.
I got a feeling I'd last about 3.5 seconds if we did, but it'd be a great 3.5 seconds.
It would be interesting. I mean, we just something funny. I mean, it was like when we speak to Craig from Merthyr. He had journeys this year. I know one was the FA Cup, but he had an FA Cup journey down to Tor Point in Cornwall, and then of course on Saturday he's gone to South Shields, and between South Shields and Tor Point, it's a 9-hour drive. I mean, you just go from one end of the country to the other just for a game of football. It's crazy, but as you say, it's just the way things pan out.
It's the price you pay for promotion.
But do you see any?
Was it that made away at Hartlepool or something? That was sort of
Gateshead. Yeah. But the question is, do you see many? Because there is clubs, isn't there, especially in the Southern League and Eastern League, that are right on that border. So the likes of Waltham Abbey, Ware, Welling Garden City, Hertford, those sort of teams are all on that sort of right on that street. Do you see many sort of swap overs this year? If we stop the season now with who's at the bottom and the top of each league, do you see it? Because I looked at the North the other day and Haybridge Swifts are down there, which is possibly like we're going to Essex. So do you see many swaps, or would you reckon it would be roughly the same?
I think you drive yourself balmy if you looked at it every week, because it's a moving document, isn't it? And it can move. Just one club out of the 4 divisions being or what have we got, 8 divisions at step 4, for instance. Just one club out of 32 changing can completely change the whole geographical footprint of it.
Yeah. But I think there'd be would there not be one happy person this year, though, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to allocations?
There'll always be unhappy people.
No. There'll be one person in particular. Won't Lawrence Jones be happy this year because he's now retired and hasn't got to worry about it? I bet he'll be well happy. We're sitting back with a cup of tea and a sandwich thinking, thank God I ain't got to do that this year.
Well, you go into it, as Terry said, you go into it with the attitude of you're never going to please everybody. And what we have to do is look at it coolly, calmly and logically. And it's not done purely on geographical location. Travelling time is important. Maximising local derbies is critical to it. And, you look about the areas of the country where there is the greatest risk of lateral movement. One of them is at step 4 between the NPL and David's League, where the boundaries for step 3 are very different to the boundaries for step 4. But we'll look at it, we'll discuss it, and we always try and accommodate, if we can, what clubs' wishes are, but it isn't always possible. All you can ever do is try to bring about a solution that is the least worst solution. The alternative is we go back to leagues of different sizes and have promotion by application again.
And the FA National League System team worked through it very thoroughly. As Mark said, looking at distances, conurbations that are close to each other, to come up with the fairest proposal. for all the clubs, benefit all the clubs, not just individual clubs, certain clubs.
But I think there's one, just the last couple of days, the one thing I've noticed is, well, because of a reprieve, I think, for Rugby Town, they've actually got fixtures of the team that they took it over from. And it's worked out really weird because in the last game of the season, if they need 3 points, they're actually playing rugby as well. So it's a local derby last game of the season. So that could be a humble.
Yeah, only one of a teensy-weensy bit of a problem there. Rugby Town are bottom of their division.
But they reckon they're going to get out from last week. They reckon they stand a chance. I don't know what you think.
We wish them well. I tell you what, great club, Rugby Town, fantastic club, and I still believe one of the best stadiums you'll ever go to outside of Step 2. It's a magnificent stadium.
Yeah. Well, listen, guys, I've taken up enough of your time, and I really appreciate you coming on again tonight. It's always absolutely fantastic talking to you, and I wish you all the very, very best, football-wise, health-wise, everything-wise, and thank you very much for coming on, and wish you all the best for the rest of the season, and hope everything goes perfectly for you as well. So thank you for joining us, and for everybody else watching, thanks for watching. Hopefully next week we'll be joined by Bury Town next week, so fingers crossed, just waiting for the confirmation. But then until next week, good night.
Cheers, Dave.